Shall, so therefore, Wayne, you can give us the go-ahead. Thank you.
Very good. Well, welcome everyone. I need to remind you that this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube for the general public. All audio and video is being captured and recorded, and in order to participate in the meeting, your video must be turned on. When you are not the active speaker, please ensure your microphone is muted so there isn't any background noise. If you do need to speak, please raise your hand so I can call on you before you unmute. Does anyone have any questions? With that, let's get started. Dawn, will you call the roll?
I will. Let me pull it up. I'm sorry, I have too many things open on my computer. There we go.
Usually when that happens to me, I end up canceling out the one I want.
I know, I was like, that's not, I clicked on the wrong thing. I thought it was already pulled up. I think I just had it in view mode versus download mode. So it is opening now, slowly, but opening. There we go. Thank you. All right. Whitney Allen.
Good afternoon, present.
Good afternoon. Deborah Aparicio. Colby Burks.
Here.
Rochelle Brown.
Here.
David Carpenter.
Here.
Robert Croft. Kim Hallbauer. Alfonso de Torres Nunez. Love-Tisha Robertson.
Present.
Robert Statt.
Here.
Terrence Sullivan.
Okay.
That ends the roll call, and Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum present.
Very good. Very good. I'd like to introduce CEO's new members, Dr. Rochelle Brown, who replaced Miko Patty, and Terrence Sullivan, who replaced John Johnson. Both Miko and John have been longtime members of this committee and have done an outstanding job. But our new members, Dr. Brown, a graduate of UK College of Medicine, comes with over 20 years of clinical practice experience, and is currently the medical director of Medicare Appeals for United Healthcare Clinicals. Dr. Brown, would you like to say anything?
Hello. Just wanted to say hello. That's a perfectly reasonable introduction. Yeah, that's I'm currently with United Healthcare, previously in academic medicine, graduate of UK, native Lexingtonian, and I'm happy to be here and looking forward to learning more and getting involved.
Do you have any particular specialty practice or general medicine, internal, or any?
I'm in internal medicine. Yeah, I'm board certified internal medicine. I don't currently clinically practice. Well, I do some telemedicine.
Okay, very good. And our other new member, Terrence Sullivan, is a graduate from the Brandeis School of Law at U of L, currently serves as the executive director of the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights. I don't believe he's in attendance, is he?
I don't see him yet.
Okay. At this point, we normally would turn our program over to Dr. Thompson, but he is not with us yet. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So let's move on to the updates from Ashland Community and Technical College. Ashland, you're on.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Larry Ferguson. I am the president at Ashland Community and Technical College, and I really appreciate the opportunity to address the committee this afternoon and share with you the work of our team here at ACTC and what we've been doing to aggressively promote and support diversity, inclusion in Northeast Kentucky. If you want, you can go to the next slide. These are certainly challenging times. You know, here at ACTC, we have felt the impact and the reverberations of the tragedies of Breonna Taylor in March of last year and George Floyd in May. Our community responded, as did the college, and both of these situations have ignited and reinforced our commitment to diversity and much needed systemic change in our college and the communities we serve. In my local leadership team here, we were able to pull together an open conversation with our underrepresented minority faculty and staff, and had a chance to have a non-structured dialogue on what was taking place in our community and our college. We focused our leadership team, some of whom you will hear from today, in reading a book by Dr. Beverly Tatum, which I would greatly recommend, Why All the Black Kids Are Sitting Together at the Lunch Table. And that was an exercise that our leadership team went through back in July. And then we had the opportunity to be a part of a presentation and some training on disruptive cultural diversity from Eric Ellis, the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation. That was so beneficial to our leadership team here at the college that Al Baker will speak later about partnering with the city of Ashland and providing that to a much wider audience. You know, at ACTC, we are committed and proud of the fact that we offer a welcoming community to students from all sorts of cultural backgrounds. And on our campuses, we celebrate our diversity and promote an inclusive environment of respect and acceptance. Later in this presentation, you will hear from Al Baker, who's our Director of Cultural Diversity. He coordinates and resources and programs designed to help support students from diverse backgrounds and help foster intercultural understanding. However, it's important for me to share that at ACTC, that work does not just fall on Al. It involves our entire leadership team, some of whom, of course, you will hear from later, and all of our faculty, staff, and students. The last thing I'll say before I turn it over to our team is that ACTC is truly a mission-led and driven institutions. Our mantra is that we educate with excellence, we serve with passion, and we succeed for life. What we do is really about changing lives, and I think that's true for all of higher education. But for that to be truly impactful, we have to help change lives of everyone in the communities we serve, and for us, particularly here in Northeast Kentucky. So again, thank you for this opportunity to share our important work. And next, I would like to introduce our Chief Student Affairs Officer, Dean Steve Woodburn.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. If we can go to the next slide. So if you don't mind, this is the one that shouldn't be on there. So one more slide. All righty. I apologize for that. So I want to begin. I want to take a few minutes just to kind of paint the picture of Ashland Community and Technical College and our communities that we serve. So on this slide, you can see what our demographics look like. We serve primarily 5 counties in Kentucky: Boyd, Carter, Elliott, Greenup, and Lawrence. And as you can see, as far as diversity is concerned, we do have minimal diversity in our area. As you can see, 97.47% as of 2010. So we know this has changed, but this is census data 2010. We're excited for the new census data to come out. But 97.5% of our population, as you can tell, is white or Caucasian. We do have 1.51% of our population is African American Black, about 1.06 is Hispanic, and about 1.07 identify as 2 or more races. And that kind of makes up our communities. Next slide, please. A little bit about ACTC. This past fall, we have about 2,400 students. Part-time, 53% of our students are part-time, and that is a change that has occurred over the last 5 years. 5 years ago, we were about 56% full-time, which is pretty abnormal for a community college. We've kind of slid in the last, recently, more like a typical community college, with 53% being part-time. You can also see that, like most community colleges, we're dominantly female, but that has gone up to 4 or 5 years ago. We were more 56% female. Now we're at almost 61% female. We serve primarily in-state students, but we do also serve students from West Virginia and Ohio, along with a few other states through distance ed. We have about 69 full-time instructional staff. And when you use your iPad's data, they count adjuncts as 1/3. So we have 151 FTE for instructional staff, and we have 13 management occupation staff. So that kind of paints the picture of what we look like. Next slide, please. What I want to talk about now is what do we really look like on the issues that matter, and that is closing that achievement gap. And what has that looked like, and that type of thing. So as you can see, this is our undergraduate enrollment. So we kind of try very hard to meet at minimum the census goals, but our goal is to be much higher than that. As you can see, our baseline in 2015, we were 1.40% African American Black, and we were 0.90% Hispanic, and total URM, we were 4.30%. That counts those who identify as 2 or more races. We have been pretty consistent, but you can see for the first time in the history of ACTC, at least the data that I can track, we in the last 2 years have had more Hispanic students than African American students. This is a relatively new thing, like I said, and something that we expect when the census comes out, that the Hispanic population is going to be a little larger than it was in 2010. The URM population, as you can see, ranges anywhere from 4.4 to 5.0%, and that's what it is. And this fall was 5% of our students were underrepresented minority. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a quick question? Back on the previous slide, the people from West Virginia and Ohio, do you have tuition reciprocity?
Depending on the counties, yes. The counties that are right next to us, we do. Very good question. All right, now this is where it matters. How are our students doing? And keep in mind, our plan takes into account low-income students also. So the 3-year graduation rate, which we have gone up as a college significantly over the last 5 years, the baseline in 2015 was 25.9% for low income. We were very proud of the number 2 years ago, 2018-19, where we hit 41.5 due to the pandemic. All of our retention or graduation numbers have gone down. So last year was 29.3. And you can see with URM, we were 13.3 in 2015-16. We were very excited on our last plan where we could report 46.2%. The pandemic impacted all of our students, but some of the underrepresented students got impacted a little bit more, and we did have less retention, or I'm sorry, graduation rates this time with 23.1. One thing to keep in mind for the good or the bad is our cohort numbers, especially for the URM category, is very low. Those cohorts can range from anywhere from 6 to 13 students. So our numbers do vary greatly because 1 or 2 students can really make a difference in our success or failures. The retention rates, as you can see, for low income is 44.9%. And in 1920, it was 56.7%. Very happy with those numbers. Those have stayed pretty steady for the low income. And then the URM, once again, on our last plan that we were able to share our data, the URM retention rate was 71.4%. We were very proud of that. Once again, in all honesty, very small cohorts. It did go down as all of our retention rates did this past spring into fall to 53.6%. But we're proud that even though I think we're a little below our goal with the 53%, we are still above the baseline that we started. So even with the pandemic, we've been able to keep above that baseline. And the next slide. All right, so that gives you an idea of how the achievement gap is going. Like I said, the pandemic has caused some issues for all of our students, and we are really trying to figure out ways to help minimize that. But right now, I would like to turn it over to Al Baker, who's our Director of Cultural Diversity, and he's going to talk about some of the activities that he does.
Hello, my name is Al Baker. I'm the Director of Cultural Diversity here at Ashland Community and Technical College. So here are some of our best practices that we've used throughout the years. One of the best practices would be the Boyd County, Greenup County NAACP Senior Salute. What it is a minority student college fair for the minority students. What we do is we get in contact with all the schools in the area and contact those counselors and get the minority students together. And what we do is we bring them on campus. And what we do also is we roll out the red carpet for these students. What we do is also we actually give them a day where they can actually do what they want to do. What we do is we have music for these students. These students have a catered meal. We have a motivational speaker. Last year we had Marie Troxler, who was an attorney who grew up in the area. Now she's a good aspiring attorney in the city of Ashland. Before that, we had Uriah Tolbert, who's the first African-American principal in the Ashland area. And then also we had Jonathan Davis, who's a UK basketball player, to come and speak with our students to motivate our students. One thing they really enjoy is I've heard this often, is we kind of like the time that we spend with one another that look like us and that sort of thing. So we always try to make sure these students are coming together every year and just having a good time and thinking about going to school and things like that. Well, again, it's a college fair, so what we do is we give these students an opportunity to talk to individual colleges. Not like when we have the other college fairs where we have multiple colleges and that sort of thing and multiple students. These kids get individual attention and they talk to these reps and then they really listen. And then, like I said, eventually some of these students go to ACTC, some students go to Morehead State, so some students go to Shawnee State. These are all the different schools that participate. And we brought in the armed forces as well. So a lot of students, that gives the students a little more opportunity to do something other than if they decide they don't want to go to school. We talk about the case management approach. That's really, I'll be honest with you, we send text messages, emails. I'll be honest, I see these kids in the hallways. I talk to these kids all the time. And I know sometimes they've actually gone to Woodburn and told them that I was harassing them, but I actually wasn't. I was just trying to keep these students involved. Another thing is what we do is we usually hire a minority student worker, and face it, we're getting old we're getting old. And a lot of times these students don't want to hear from us. They want to hear from students that are their age. So what we do is we have this work study to go out and talk to the students about attending ACTC. And like I said, it really works, and it's a really good time for those students to understand and to hear things that they understand. I mean, because like I said, they think we're too old, and a lot of times they don't want to listen to us. So again, we got a work study to actually go to the school and talk with these students. Community engagement, I think Dr. Ferguson mentioned one of the trainings that we had with the city of Ashland. What I've done is gone to the city of Ashland and talked to the city of Ashland about a diversity training. And like I said, we decided that we do a diversity training, and I really appreciate Dr. Ferguson taking the lead on getting someone here that's really, that knows a lot about diversity and that sort of thing. We reached out to not Dr. Ellis, but Eric Ellis. He's the president and CEO Integrity Development Corp. And he came and actually did a webinar for 2 hours. And like I said, we had about 50 to 75 people participating. And this is just mid-management. This wasn't what we want to do is we want to start off with mid-management, and then later on we'll try to address actually give the webinar to everybody. but we actually had 50 to 75 people to participate in this webinar. Like I said, one of the things that we want to do and we strive to do is when people think of Eastern Kentucky, they want to think of ACTC as a diversity leader. And next we have Kelly Allen, who's the Director of Human Resources.
Thank you, Al. So as you can see on the chart that despite budgetary challenges, the college has continued to make progress towards our employment and retention goals for our URM cohort. Can we go to the next slide, please? We have employed several methods to increase URM applicants, such as utilizing national recruitment sites such as higheredjobs.com, Indeed.com, and then we've also used some regional websites. The Higher Educational Regional Consortium targets Kentucky in general. All of our search committee members review training videos on unconscious bias, and during any committee meeting, there's an opportunity to discuss what they've learned from those videos and ask any questions. We're going to continue to look for new strategies to boost our recruitment. But I think that's about it from the HR side. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Todd Brand. He's our Chief Academic Officer.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. My name is Todd Brand. I'm actually a transplant here in the Commonwealth, as I came from Mississippi last year. So I'm one of the newer CAOs in the state. I'm still learning the nuances of the diversity plans utilized at our KCTCS schools. As we look at what academic affairs at ACTC is doing, I'd like us to focus on two areas. The primary area is what we're doing with our students in the classroom. And secondly, I would like to touch on future efforts involving faculty here at ACTC. Each year at our college meeting, our Chief Student Services Officer, Dean Woodburn, stresses the importance of college faculty discussing cultural diversity in their classrooms. And currently at our college, faculty are very involved in incorporating elements of diversity education into their respective curricula. And I'm very happy to say that this takes place on both sides of the academic house, both on the gen ed side and on the technical side. And so what I'd like to do is give you just a couple of examples of what our faculty are actually doing in the classroom with our students. In our criminal justice program, for example, in all classes, there are discussions about the importance of recruiting and retention of a culturally diverse workforce in law enforcement agencies. In our English classes, one unit of study is award-winning books. 2 of the 3 categories are representative of both African American culture or Hispanic culture. In our English 102 class, Langston Hughes is one of our featured authors, and using him as a backdrop opens the door to exploring the Harlem Renaissance and the work of African American artists in the early 20th century. In our business program, our business communication technology class discusses cultural diversity and how it can affect teamwork. Students learn about high context and low context cultures and how these differences can impact communication, understanding, and decision making. Our early childhood program teaches students how to work collaboratively with families from diverse cultural backgrounds. And in nursing, cultural diversity is covered extensively in the first semester. Each freshman clinical group is assigned a different culture, and students work together as a team, and they do a presentation to the class. Our LPN program actually has a cultural day where they celebrate cultural differences and different cultures that we see in our society around the United States and the world. In our psychology classes, culturally diverse themes are addressed via class dialogues following lectures involving cultural diversity. And culturally diverse topics are also given as an assignment as part of the final assessment. And that's an important piece that I'll talk about in just a few minutes. In our American government class, diversity discussions and requirements are built into the final exam and also the rubric for grading. Students also do a pro and con political issue paper, and for their final have to write about pluralism and the diversity of ideals and ideologies surrounding the topics of American government. And these are just some of the things that we're doing actually with our students in the classroom. In doing some analysis of our efforts, 2 important facts really stood out to me as I studied this. First, we need cultural diversity education in our manufacturing and transportation programs. This was the one group of programs that's not currently involved in this process. So we're talking about advanced integrated technology, welding, electrical, computerized machining and manufacturing, industrial maintenance, automotive, and diesel. It's extremely important for a person to work in a 21st century industrial setting to be culturally aware and competent when thinking about such areas as teamwork and employee relations. And so we're going to work hard in the future faculty in our meetings to make this a reality. Secondly, we've done a great deal of formative assessment in some of our classes, and this is the monitoring of student learning and providing feedback. I think we've done a fairly good job of that, but now we need a summative model of assessment that's going to tackle the other side of the coin. In other words, we need to evaluate our students' learning and we need to compare it against some standard or benchmark. Now, whether this involves seeking out and using an established model, modifying an established model for our own purposes, or creating a model ourselves, summative assessment is absolutely the next phase of our development. This concludes my remarks on the primary area of what academic affairs is doing, which involves initiatives with our students. Now, turning our attention quickly to the faculty side, we already have ongoing efforts to involve more faculty in the process of diversity education. And of course, these will continue. And this will take place in faculty meetings and small group settings as we proceed. But there's another side to this, and I think it also ties into HR. How do we recruit URM faculty to work at our colleges? That's probably one of the biggest challenges that we have probably at all of our institutions. And one of the initiatives that I think our division, the Academic Affairs Division, could have success in is if we had a comprehensive plan to grow future URM faculty at our colleges. Some places call this grow your own programs. Duke University really pioneered this about 25 years ago. And there have been some other programs up and down the East Coast that have had similar success. And what this would entail would be creating a comprehensive scholarship and mentoring program, as well as institutions and KCTCS working together to hire graduates throughout the Commonwealth. It's an idea that's very similar to our KCTCS Fellows program, but this would start at the student level as they matriculated to our institution. This idea is kind of in its infancy in my head, but I felt it was worth mentioning on this occasion, as it is something that I definitely want to explore, and I've discussed this with some of the other members of our team. So these are some of the things that the Academic Affairs Division at ACTC is doing to fulfill our commitment to diversity. So I'll now turn the presentation back over to Steve Woodburn.
Let me unmute myself, I'm sorry. That is the conclusion of our presentation. Do you have any questions for us?
I'm not sure if it's a question, but more of a statement. And that is, well, Dr. Brand talked on education and hit on a number of areas. But everything we're hearing here is cultural diversity, but actually our group is goes by diversity, doesn't say cultural. And I have some issues or problems at times with intellectual diversity within the classroom. And in that way, to me, I've seen several examples of critical thinking being stifled. And Dr. Ferguson mentioned changing lives in the community. Well, you've got to have critical thinkers to do that. And the political views of professors sometimes is overpowering to the student. To me, the best professor is one that you don't know the political orientation of, but encourages all aspects of discussion. And to me, intellectual diversity still needs some attention as well.
Dr. Brand, would you like to comment on that?
I absolutely could not agree with him more. I think that intellectual diversity is absolutely the cornerstone of higher education, and he's absolutely right. There has been a stifling of that, and I think that pendulum can swing from one side to the other. I will say that I also agree with the notion that a good professor is one who does not reveal his or her political beliefs to their students. The mantra that I lived by when I was in the classroom for over 20 years at the college level, and I would tell the students this, is it's not my job to tell you what to think, but how to think. And I really think that that's our mantra here at ACTC. I have conveyed this to our faculty on more than one occasion. We do talk about this in our meetings. It's not a formalized thing, but I do take your point on that. And I absolutely agree that freedom of expression, freedom of speech, academic freedom, as we call it here, has got to reign, unfortunately, in in the current political climate, that has been difficult. And I do think there are probably some instructors that don't reveal these things, but also may be scared to have these discussions because of some of the blowback that they feel they might get. So it's a tough time to be a professor in higher ed right now, but the point's well made.
Hey, this is Dr. Letitia Robertson. I have a question pertaining to the high industry sectors that you mentioned earlier. So you stated that you do not currently have a diversity component in place or a high impact practice to support the technical programs at ACTC. So I just want to get some further information on what type of discussions, work groups, or strategies have you all or plan to devise to include in your diversity plan moving forward?
Dean Woodburn, do you want me to address that first?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Dr. Brand. I just assumed you would.
No, that's okay. And when we talk about our tech programs, we're only talking about the manufacturing programs. So it's a small handful of those. And to be honest, we don't have a formalized plan yet, other than we have had discussion about it. I've spoken to the faculty. We're going to try to have some training to get them involved. We just finished reorganizing the Academic Affairs Division this fall. So I do have a person in place who's in a leadership position who will lead that area. And so that's Dr. Shannon Hankins. And so she and I are going to work together to develop a strategy on how to do that. But basically what it comes down to is we've got to have this frank discussions with them on the importance of why they need this and why those students need that. Because although some of those students do get an associate's degree, which would provide them with some of this education through those general education, that component of courses that they take, if they're getting a diploma or certificate, they'll miss that. So that's been my worry about this. Again, I'm fairly new to this and I'm going to plead that, but that is going to be a front burner item for us in addressing that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a quick question. I guess we talked a lot about the classroom setting and the curriculum that's aimed at this diversity and learning how to work within this diverse framework. Is there any plans or implementations that involve outside of the classroom? I know that when I was at Moorhead, some of the best experiences I got with diversity, whether that be economic, with our underrepresented minorities, was the experiences I had outside of the classroom, such as working pro se clinics with the legal aid, such as I went to Canada and did an internship, and in Canada I got to work with people of diverse cultural backgrounds and things like that. So is there anything outside of the classroom that is aimed at allowing these students to develop practical skills of working within diverse frameworks?
Dr. Brand, you want to take a crack at that?
Yes, the answer to that is absolutely yes. We have got a couple of things that are going on right now, both through I think apprenticeships and internships. We've got a couple of new people that are on board here at the college. One is Miss Molly Webb, who's taken over our career services department. And so she is working with her staff to provide more diverse internships for our students. She's out there working every day, trying to find new companies for our students to partner with and to get their programs partnered with and getting those students those experiences. And Mr. Kevin Harrison is our apprenticeship coordinator here at the college, and he is out there seeking these things too on a daily basis. So the answer to your question is yes, we're not there yet, but we are working, and I think we're going to make some strides.
And I would like to add to that, and I just drew a blank because I looked at a text. We do the partnership that we had with the city over the summer actually went so well, and I know Al's being a little humble over this, but they have reached out to him and actually want to hire him with a stipend to assist the city with more diversity efforts. And I think that partnership, as it enhances and increases, will open up more opportunities for our students outside of our classroom and maybe more inside of the community, more inside the jobs in the community to assist with that. So I think that's one of the things Mr. Baker will be working on with his new partnership with the city. The other thing is we do a lot of presentations outside the classroom. We do try to engage our students in multiple different ways. We also reach out to students to help work in the diversity office and help us reach out to students. So sometimes that's a good way to have great conversations is the work in the diversity office. So we do try and we'll continue to try to expand what we do both inside and outside of the classroom.
I have a question. What services do you offer for your, and I haven't seen anything in the plan for the LGBTQ population or community on your campus?
All right, that is a wonderful question, and that is a great question, and one that we admittedly need to do a better job of. We do send emails and messages, and we make sure that all students know that ACTC is a safe place, and we let them know people that they can come talk to. We do have clearly an LGBTQ community here. Many students stop in my office. The one thing that's unique about us, I don't think you'll find very many dean of student offices that's right off the main hallway without a administrative assistant in the way. So my door is always open, and I have the privilege of having some wonderful conversations with all of our students. But I have had multiple conversations with LGBTQ students. So that is something we do need to improve and something that we will continue to try to do a better job on. We do have a professor who every semester does send out an email letting folks know that he is open to having conversations with any LGBTQ community member or student who wants to have any concern, who has any concerns, who wants to talk to him about anything. And then of course my door is always open. But yes, there is a lot of room for improvement for that area.
Do you plan to include any of that in your diversity plan written?
At this point, we have not, but it would fit under some of the strategies. So I certainly can add that. We do things, we just don't realize, I think, at times what all we do. So that is something that we can add in the future, new strategies. And there are things that we can add in our current strategies to show what we're trying to do in that area.
Yeah, I would recommend that.
Thank you very much.
Idea.
Can I interject something, Dean Woodburn?
Yes.
One of the things I was going to say is that the LGBTQ group, the rapidity, the pace that change takes place is really fast. And that's one of the things that we've seen, I think, in higher ed in the last couple of years. And as Dean Woodburn will know, there has to be education of the faculty as well as the students because of that, because as a society, we're all having to evolve and we're all having to grow. And so one of the things that I did this year was decided to involve the faculty in this discussion so that it would filter down to our students. And so one of the things I did, for example, was send an email out to the faculty having a discussion about the use of pronouns. And that was something that was very important to one of our faculty members. And so we've had several faculty get on board with putting their pronouns in on their emails and things like that. It's opened up discussions with their students. So I do think things are happening, but as Dean Woodburn said, it's not part of the formalized plan yet. But I think we will catch up.
This is Alfonso de Torres. I have a question. I'm going to try to organize it the best way I can. So I want to piggyback on something that Mr. Burks was saying before about international programs. So my question to you would be then, how do you use the world languages programs within your institution to create those partnerships and those conversations that you were mentioning before, not only in order to provide access and opportunity for students to opportunities to get out there, but also use those to bring diversity to your institution? That would be one part of the question. The other part of the question would be, how much do you use, or if you have any plans to use, or if there's any use at all, of the world languages teachers in the public school districts in the area? And I'm saying this because after several conversations with them, they are somehow disappointed in the fact that Ashland could do more based on what they said, not what I'm saying, but based on what they say. They find a lot of potential in Ashland, and it's like it's not happening. So could you talk a little bit about this, please?
Dr. Brand and Al, I'm having difficulty hearing the question. Could either one of you take that if at all possible?
I think what he was really asking is that there may be some lost opportunities between ACTC and our K-12 partners with regard to offering diversity opportunities through foreign language programs, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
That would be the second part of the question.
That's the second part, right? And I'll be honest, I did not get all of the first part.
Yeah, and that's why I say I'm going to try to organize my thoughts.
Sure.
My first part of the question is, what opportunities is Ashland seeking out there, not only to create opportunities for the students, to send the students to perhaps another country like Canada, so that they can create partnerships and gather experience, but at the same time, create those opportunities for other students, maybe as part of an international exchange program, to bring them into Ashland and that way create diversity in the campus.
I will answer the first part of that question, and I'll let you take the second part, Dr. Brand. We have had very robust programs to do just that. At one point in time, we actually had an exchange program with China and had 2 full-time Chinese instructors who lived. We provided them with a home here on campus. We've had some robust conversations with Ohio University Southern, who has a campus close by, Marshall University. They too are struggling with diversity, primarily because of the numbers that Dean Woodburn had shared, the 97.4% white in this area. But our biggest concern, sir, honestly, while that program no longer exists now, was very successful, has been budget cuts. And those programs like that are very, very expensive for us, and that was a fantastic program, and one that I wish that we could have continued. It was here for, and I know Kelly Allen's on the call, our HR director, but I know of probably 10 years. And so it's been at least 5 or more since we've done that. So a lot of those things, we still, of course, we want to strive to create those partnerships. And I work closely with all of the superintendents. I was on the phone today with 2 of them. We often talk about how to best integrate more in diversity and inclusion in their faculty staff as well as ours. And we try to utilize, if they have diverse faculty, in our dual credit program. And we're in every one of our high schools offering dual credit classes, trying to make sure that we're bridging those gaps. But our biggest challenge, though, with sending students internationally or doing those things has been the cost and the challenge with that. Dr. Brand, you want to try the second part?
Okay.
Well, as far as working with our K-12 partners, I will tell you that our biggest challenge, as I've gotten acclimated to this job, has been getting a handle on dual credit, as that's one of the fastest growing parts of what we do with our academic partners. Also with Perkins, and with keeping up with making sure that all of our places we partner with meet accreditation standards. We have, you're probably right, we don't have any extensive partnerships doing what you're talking about. So it's definitely something that we can look into. And that's really about all I can say at this point. Is they're absolutely right. We probably are missing some opportunities there.
I was just saying, and as a follow-up to Dr. Ferguson, how to say, I know if you check the index of international economics in Kentucky, the region of Ashland is actually, it has a pretty interesting pocket of international companies. So I was thinking, Dr. Ferguson, perhaps if this is a time in which the money price is not there because of budget cuts, has Ashland considered perhaps having those conversations with the local international companies that perhaps they could feel interested in partnering with Ashland Community College to create those partnerships? And I'm saying this because then later on, further down the road, that may impact positively in their operational process, in the sense that they are going to be able to hire graduates from your institution, which are not only skilled in whatever is required, but also have all those international skills and globally competence. And, so maybe it is in their interest as well to partner and support you, maybe. I don't know.
I greatly, those are some great suggestions and definitely things I would hope that would happen for the Ashland area. Unfortunately, we've been economically depressed for many years, and there is a new international-based company in our city we've been working with, Daniele, which is an Italian company. But beyond that, we don't really have an international presence with companies. So unfortunately, it's not like Northern Kentucky or Central Kentucky, where I've done work, where there is a much larger a representation of international companies. They're just not here. We do have Toyota, which is about 45 minutes to an hour away in West Virginia. We've been working closely with them on a lot of opportunities. I hope we get the opportunity for more of those companies to locate here, and then we can really have some of these critical conversations about how we partner and how we foster some of these strategies. And I hope that happens for us.
That, if you don't mind me jumping in, we did have, I'll put my video on, and Al Baker, Al, don't mean to put you on the spot, but Marathon Petroleum, of course, is in our area. And we have had conversations with them around cultural or diversity issues, around diversity scholarships and things like that. So we've had probably 2 conversations with them in the last 8 months. Actually, it was probably before the pandemic, so I'm lying, because we haven't really talked to them too much in person since then. But we have had conversations with Marathon about how we can help give them a more diverse workforce, and they're interested, and they do fund a scholarship, and they're interested in maybe funding additional scholarships for diverse students. And one other thing, I don't mean to stretch this out, but one thing that we can look into that Dr. Brandon and I haven't discussed, and Dr. Ferguson, is, community colleges do not do a lot of study abroad programs, but there are community colleges that do. Matter of fact, my previous community college in North Carolina just started a study abroad program 2 years ago. And one of my best friends is the leader of that. So we could certainly touch base with him and see how he got that started, because they would have had the same issues as us. Funding would have been an issue, and international connections would have been an issue. But I believe they went to Peru last year, and I believe they went to Russia the year before. So, and that's what they've done the last 2 years. So we certainly have connections with at least one college that does some study abroad programs, and we can get with them and figure out how they fund it and how they get interest in that. Because I am sure they're using local folks to help fund that a little bit.
And I would be more than happy to be of any assistance that you guys may need. I used to be the state supervisor for world languages in the Kentucky Department of Education. So I would not mind at all giving you some leads, not only at the local level, but also on the international level, in case if you would be interested. So please feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Well, watch what you volunteer for, because we will use you.
I'm writing your name down right now.
No problem.
Thank you, Alfonso. Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
Yes, sir. This is Whitney Allen. Dr. Ferguson, to you and your team, great presentation and and thank you for your great work you're doing. My question is, are you doing anything in particular or special in integrating veterans into your school, either with the culture, knowing their benefits, besides the GI Bill or anything like that?
Yes, we are. It's interesting in Kentucky and a close by neighborhood to us, West Virginia, we have one of the highest propensities of veterans of most states. And I will let Dean Woodburn speak a little bit about this, but we actually have a full-time person who focuses on Veterans Affairs, trying to entice and recruit veterans into programs here to utilize those benefits that they may or may not have. And Steve, would you like to talk a little bit about what Craig's doing?
Yeah, that actually is an important part of our diversity plan, even though we didn't discuss it today. that was when we created these diversity plans, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago now. We were able to add special components, and veteran students was that focus that we put on. So we do, not only do we have a designated employee who happens to be an African American, so he is diverse in working with our veterans, but he also is very much part of, I'm trying to think of the word, on basing these students when they walk in the door. So he meets with every single one of them personally, and he makes sure that they know what all of the opportunities are. And he works very close with veteran organizations. We actually have a couple veteran organizations that do career fairs, and he's part of those plans on putting together these career fairs. So we do a really, really good job with them. Sometimes they're a high touch group, and the more that you can touch them, the more secure and comfortable they feel with working with us. And so we really try to do that with that group. And Craig also works closely with Al to do student focus groups with not just URM students, but veteran students, and make sure that we're getting their input on how they're doing. And one other thing that I wanted to let you all know, we also started a student ambassador program this semester. And part of the goal of that student ambassador program is to help out with diversity efforts and to have diverse students be part of that student ambassador group. Right now we have 3, and we have one student who is originally from the Philippines, and then we're hoping to have another URM student. So we're hoping to have 2 of the 4 students being diverse students. So that is something we're proud of too. But yes, we do work with veterans quite closely, both in and out of the community, in the school and in the community.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, thank you for a very good discussion and presentation. Very informative, and I think the committee members really benefited from what you had to say.
Thank you very much. If you all ever need anything else from us, let us know.
Money?
Your input. Thank you.
Okay. Don, has Aaron called in yet?
I don't see him, Dr. Stat. So we can
I
continue.
didn't see him either. Okay, so we'll move on. Again, thank you to Ashland for their presentation. It was very informative. But let's move on as a committee now for approval of the minutes. They were distributed, and I found nothing to change, but does anyone have any, well, a motion to approve the minutes and then discussion? May I have a motion?
This is Tim. So I'm motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you, Leticia. Now, and any comments on the content of the minutes? Discussion? All in favor of approving them as written, please say aye.
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 Any opposition? Abstentions? Okay, minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is, I'll turn it over to, okay, it says, Devron, did you have a comment to make?
Yes, I'm going to present on our evaluation process.
Okay, because I had that down here for Don, but go ahead. This is, we've thought about changing or trying to make it a little clearer how to evaluate the different proposals and maybe consolidate some of the strategies and make our scoring process a little more intuitive. So Devron, go ahead.
Yes. So today I wanted to go over the scoring process. It's kind of hard to believe that it's already time to go through another process. But just for some of the newer people and just for a refresher, here's a little bit about our scoring process as detailed in our statewide diversity policy. So this year we'll be doing the annual report for 2020, so which means we're looking at the 2019 and 2020 data that's going to be analyzed, and then a qualitative report will also be submitted. Our evaluation is based on a rubric. It's divided into 2 sections, and those sections are the quantitative and qualitative. For the quantitative portion of the evaluation is 18 possible points for universities and 16 possible points for KCTCS institutions. Those 2 extra points for universities are because of the option of grad school. So then the minimum score for eligibility to offer new programs is 24 for universities and 22 for KCTCS institutions. So moving on for the quantitative portion of our evaluation, the evaluation sets targets on the following areas. They are undergraduate and graduate enrollment, the first and second year retention for URM and low-income students, graduation rate for URM and low-income students, degrees conferred and credentials awarded for URM and low-income students, and then overall workforce diversity. So there are 9 areas for universities and 8 areas for KCTCS institutions. There are 3 possible options for scoring. You can either get a 2, a 1, or a 0 for quantitative. So the 2 would mean that the annual target was met or exceeded. The 1 would be that an annual target was not met, but it's greater than the baseline value that was set in 2015-16 year. Or you get a 0, which means that the annual target did not meet the target and the value was less than the 15-16 baseline. Again, it's a max of 18 points for universities and 16 points for KCTCS institutions.
Devin, is that moving to the 2015, 2016? At some point that will be outdated. When will that be moved forward or changed, or will it?
So most of our diversity plans go into it's from 2015-16 year into 2021. So we're right now we're in the process of looking at our policy and trying to get stakeholders to evaluate what we can do going forward. I think overall I think the policy was liked and well received by most people. But yeah, you are correct that the policy is coming up.
I would suggest that you possibly just consider a 5-year gap. But just keep it rolling with a 5-year gap like we have now.
Yes. So then moving forward, each institution is required to give an enrollment narrative, and this is in our statewide diversity policy, and based off of the diversity that their institution showed in that year. So diversity has a wide definition in our policies. It's defined as people with varied human characteristics, ideas, worldviews, and backgrounds. Diversity in concept expects the creation by institution of a safe, supportive, and nurturing environment that honors and respects those differences. So diversity can be anything from the sexuality to gender to religious differences to even our vets. So then, again, talking about our enrollment narrative, there are targets set in the following areas that are African-American undergraduate enrollment, Hispanic undergraduate enrollment, URM undergraduate enrollment, and URM graduate enrollment for our universities. Then a narrative is provided by each campus to show how each student body is diverse in its own way. as described by our policy. And each institution, for this section, for the enrollment narrative, it's either a pass or a fail. So it's a 2 or a 0 in this category. So moving on to the qualitative portion, which entails more of involvement from you all, is that there are 3 focus areas that are outlined in our policy. Those areas are opportunity, success, and impact. So each institution has a plan, and they identify strategies designated to meet each of these goals. For each of the categories, there are 3 questions, and this is how they are evaluated. It is, how is this strategy implemented with fidelity? What is the analysis of effectiveness? And what are the lessons learned and next steps for this strategy? And so the evaluation is scored again in 3 different areas. So it's a 2, 1, a 0. A 2 would indicate that they met or exceeded expectations. A 1 would say that they're making progress towards meeting expectations, or a 0, it does not meet expectations, for a maximum of 18 points. Timeline that we're going by. The diversity reporting tool for each institution to report their strategies officially opened today on January 25th. And those reports will be due on March 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On March 1st, we will have our calibration meeting to discuss, to make sure that everyone's on the same page when evaluating the reports. The scores will be due on April 16th, and then the scores will be presented to CPE on June 25th. Are there any questions?
Hi, Devin. Thank you for that overview and the update for the new members. I do have a question. So have there been any discussions on adding a section for colleges and universities to address like frameworks to support their diversity plans through the continuation or end of the plan year?
I'm sorry, you cut out just a little bit. Can you repeat your question?
Yes, sir. Have there been any discussions about adding a subsection to the plan, or well, not to the plan, but to the rubric for colleges and universities to add information about post-pandemic strategies or how they plan on updating or addressing those issues moving forward in their diversity plans?
There hasn't been any conversation about adding a section, but there has been conversation regarding the pandemic. So we had a discussion about that earlier in our institutional rep meeting this morning, that there was concerns brought up about that as well. And what we relayed to our members is that, or to the institutional reps, is just to be honest and tell us what really happened in those during that time, and then we'll take those into consideration. And but we also have to note that we're reporting on the 18-19 year, so it would affect only the spring semester for some of the strategies that they were trying to do.
Correct. Okay, thank you for that.
1920 year.
So they would document that under lessons learned, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for Devin? Thank you, sir. It was well done.
Thank you.
And now I'll turn it over to Dawn for her DEI update.
Dr. Thompson has joined us now, Dr. Stat, so we will turn it over to him.
Very good. Hello, Aaron.
Good afternoon, Dr. Stat and committee. Good to see everybody. I wished I was here with you this entire time. I know we're listening to some good stuff. I tell you what, my schedule doesn't seem to let up no matter what I try to do, no matter how many threats I make, no one seems to listen. But it's good to be with you just for a little while. First of all, if I could, and I'll make sure I save enough time for any questions anyone want to ask me, I do want to welcome Terrence Sullivan and Rochelle Brown. I see Rochelle. Hi, Rochelle. How are you?
She's got to unmute, I think.
Trying to unmute. Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
Wow, good. Good to have you on board. It's
Thank you.
what a pleasure. I probably know more about you than you do me, which is not a bad thing. But I'm glad you're on board. Is Terrence with us?
He wasn't earlier.
Okay, well, I'll welcome him more face or virtual face-to-face when I get a chance. I do want to give you a couple of updates, Dr. Stad, if I could. Stuff you already know, but maybe the committee doesn't know, or you may have given it to them already, but just in case, I will. Now, we're pleased to say we've made a lot of progress toward our goals. As you all know, we have a 60% attainment we want to have in Kentucky by 2030, and that simply means that we have to have, at least in our opinion and our way of thinking and the trajectories we've set, when we look at how we want our workforce and the economy to be a thriving workforce and a thriving economy, we need to have at least a 60% educational attainment, post-secondary educational attainment by 2030. And that means that someone will have at least a certificate or higher that would allow them to actively participate in the workforce. I mean, some of you know this already. Kentucky, we're about 5th from the bottom in poverty. We have, in many cases, and I'll talk about this in a second, you know, about 50% of our students graduating from high school going to college. We know we have to do better if we're going to improve. We know we're going to have to close gaps if we're going to improve. And so these are all the pieces that we've got in our puzzle, not all, but a few of the pieces that we got in our puzzle that we find that we're working pretty well on some, and that's what I'm here to give you today. In our 1920 statewide graduation and retention rates, we were up significantly. And I have to tell you, when we set that goal of having a 60% 4-year graduation, 6-year graduation rate for 4-year institutions back 5 years ago, I knew that was probably an unattainable goal because we were really low. But I have to say that we've gone a long way. Now, that was an extreme aspirational goal, and we knew that, but we have increased it tremendously. For those who know about student success, know that it's hard to move a graduation rate 1 percentage point, period, for an institution. But when you're talking about an entire system, an entire state that consists of 8 universities and 16 community colleges, you know, it's hard to move that graduation rate up. But when we look at our community colleges as a whole, they were up about 8.4 percentage points, whereas our 4-year institutions were up significantly also. So I'm proud of everybody. The item that I'm really proud of is that we raised our underrepresented minority totals up too. So we took everybody up. The gap isn't closing as fast as I want it to close, even though we're raising attainment rates, it's not. If you look at pure attainment over the last many years, what you'll see that Kentucky, even in years of budget cuts, which has been every year for 12 years, we increased our overall credentials about 17%, which is huge. If you look at our underrepresented minorities, way over 35%. So we're doubling what our overall attainment is. So we're closing that attainment gap. Our graduation rates are up significantly for our minority students as well as our low income, but not nearly as much for our low income. This has to be of significant consideration. If you look at the enrollment this past fall, in which nationally it was all, we're down over 10%, we thought we would be too. So what we did early with our Gear Up folk, as well as with other people, we put an all-out blitz on helping people fill out the FAFSA. We actually took our out-of-state tuition percent, which is about 2.5 times before that of an in-state, and we took it down to 1.3. We did a variety of things focusing on how we can get more people to come to post-secondary and stay in post-secondary. We focused heavily on affordability. We had the lowest tuition rate hike in the history of the Council on Post-Secondary Education at a 0.7. And I'm proud of that. The year before that, we had the lowest. So the last 2 years have been the lowest. So we ended up this fall with our four-year institutions about flat. Actually, our private institutions were up about 3%. Now, our KCTCS campuses were down, and that's of concern. But, you know, we're going to be working on that too. So we're happy that we came in where we were at. As you all know, also during this COVID period, we worked really hard. The governor gave us control over how higher ed opens up, but I'm going to give higher ed their kudos. I mean, you guys, where rubber meets the road, you really showed up. We kept our people safe. Our positivity average was lower than the states. And we did a lot of isolation, a lot of testing. We did what we needed to do to keep our students safe while we were still advancing them academically. The issues we have to try to figure out is how do we wrap ourselves around the social, emotional, cultural elements that you do tend to do far better face-to-face. How do we deal with that? You know, the mental health issue is forever increasing. These are all items that we are looking at, trying to figure out how to create a continuous improvement model to address. So we're happy with what's going on. We're at the end of our strategic planning. We're assessing our last plan. Let me be clear, the Council on Post-Secondary Education, we set a strategic agenda. In other words, where we'd like to see our state go in the next 5 years. And that's what we did the last 5 years, where we're assessing now. Our campuses build their strategic plans around that agenda. And we're in the process of assessing. There's going to be some positives we're going to celebrate. There's going to be some items that we're going to really take a look at and see if we want to continue that. And there's going to be some that we are going to need to double down on. And maybe some we don't even have anymore because we've reached the particular goal on that, or we found out that the methodology or the actions we used to achieve it were just not good. So we're going to be looking at that and getting a lot of input, as you know we did the last strategic agenda. One of the areas I promise you we're not going to do is to back off of is doubling down on what we do for our disenfranchised populations. We are going to be actually pushing that even harder. Which takes me to this new entity we created in Kentucky that I'm leading along with the Lieutenant Governor as well as the Commissioner for Education. It's called the Commonwealth Continuum. It's the Commonwealth Education Continuum is the full name. And it's really that P20 way of thinking about education. And if you heard me speak before, you know, I'll say the best way to truly help higher education is to create a strong, solid early childhood system because it's a feeder process. And I call it pathways, pipelines, process, and potholes, the 4 Ps. We have too many potholes in that pipeline. We haven't designed a pathway that's clear enough. So we're going to take ourselves and look at it at a deep level. And the folk who are running these are policy leaders in the state that we can do stuff about it. Why aren't we transitioning more people to post-secondary, you know, than 50%? That's problematic. This is going to take a P20 effort. Why aren't we using our dual credit, which is a college course, to be aligned in a pathway that takes us where we need to go? If we got an issue with teachers of color, why aren't we building a pathway, a pipeline, and a process for them to get there? It's going to take it earlier than just when we get them in post-secondary. So all of these items, that's only a few, we're going to be looking at in great depth, and we're going to be leading it. We've got to get a better transfer process between our 2-year and 4-year. Even though we have a seamless system, we're not taking advantage of it nearly enough. Let me give you some quick legislative updates. Now I'm going to shut up, Dawn, because I got a lot to talk about, and you don't want me to take up all your time doing it. But I would really like to open it up for people who have questions. I'm happy to report that the executive budget that the governor sent to the legislature has higher ed included at a 2%, actually 1% is in performance funding, 1% general base revenue increase, but a 2% overall higher ed increase, as well as a $50 million resurgence fund. This is a deferred maintenance fund that we can use to help some of our needed buildings get back in operational order. He put forth some help for pension relief for our comprehensive campuses and KCTCS, but also he put in this budget of his, we'll see where it goes, is called the Better Kentucky Promise, which is to increase more students to be able to get at least a 2-year degree free of charge. If this goes to the legislature and passes, it really takes that work-ready scholarship we currently have and puts it on steroids a little bit. It allows it to be opened up to a variety of folk other than those big 5 areas that the work-ready scholarship currently has. A lot of other bills that are happening and that's going on, I'm sure you are following. The legislature is on a 2-week hiatus. They'll be back February 2nd, and then we'll see what happens with the budget at that time. Dawn, I'd love to be able, Dr. Stat, love to be able to take any questions that you all have or anyone else on this committee.
Questions, anyone? Actually, before we get into that, I'd like to point out that you're going to be featured about this time next month on a leadership, equity, and diversity mapping your journey here at U of L with Faye Jones and Neely Bendapudi and a couple other people, but you're the featured speaker.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, actually. I'm looking forward to what University of Louisville has been doing, has been trying to do. And I love being a part of it. Tonight, I'm on KET for those who want to watch to talk about higher ed. Yesterday, I was on Kentucky Newsmakers. Hopefully everybody watched and saw that I'm looking old. If you got a high def screen and you know, I was really in the middle of that screen, you could see every wrinkle that I had. And Dr. Stat, I thought once upon a time, I looked in the mirror, maybe last week I was getting younger, but I realized yesterday that was somehow I had drank too much bourbon the night before, I guess, but no, I'm not.
Or not enough, so you can still see. Or not enough. Questions for Dr. Thompson?
Dr. Thompson, this is Alfonso. I have a question, and given the current political state, and also here in Kentucky, you mentioned the budget that was created by the governor, but do you have any insight as to if that budget will finally be approved, keeping that specific element for higher education? And if not, how is that going to impact our work in terms of diversity and equity? And I'm asking because over the last year and a half, I have seen how essential and how critical our work as a committee is in our campus and in our institutions. And I'm very much afraid that because of budget cuts, they may say, well, you know, this is not important. So if so, how we, each of the members of this committee, can help to leverage for a decision that would be positive for us?
That's an excellent question. And you asked about 4 of them in there. And well, maybe not 4 questions, you made 4 statements. I like to turn them into some answers. One answer is you all should understand how crucial you really are. When you look at our numbers where we've increased the most, let me put it in perspective. The only demographic group that was up this past fall were underrepresented minorities, by 6%. When you look at the way we are closing attainment gaps, so much so one of the best in the country, considering that we've had no funding. That's phenomenal. Number 3, I think you should understand that this committee is a CPE committee. And as long as CPE exists, and Dr. Stat's on my board, so I'll just make sure that he verifies this, hopefully, we will be existing doing this work. So when we think about what we're doing, this is crucial to the economy of the state. This is crucial to not let people behind. So number 4, I've argued to the legislature over and over again, as many others, as if you listen to Kentucky newsmakers, I made the same argument. We are not about just another agency you have to fund. Higher ed and CPE, we are about a strategic process that gives you a return on investment that's 68 times the amount you put into it. We are the best return on investment that we have in the state. You don't get that kind of return on investment anywhere. So the argument is that whether you keep the governor's budget exactly the way it is, or if you enhance it, hopefully, like the legislature did last year before COVID, they enhanced this budget. So we are arguing for at least that and an enhancement. You know, the folks, we got great people in the legislature who's on higher ed side here. And we're taking every angle we have to work with those good people to make sure that that happens. We also did something that I didn't report on. We had, you know, we have performance funding, and in law, we had to come back and review performance funding. So it was me, as well as all the presidents in the state, or public presidents. It was the governor's office, it was Senate leadership and House leadership. We all agreed on that. And a part of that agreement was that they'd be putting money in higher ed as a way to distribute, new funding as a way to distribute that money. So if that goes into law, they are making a commitment to us, not just now, but toward the future. So they see it as a strategic opportunity to increase the what they are trying to do in Kentucky is a bigger tax base to help us fund all the other things. The other point I'll point out, and I'm giving way too much of a speech, but it goes to your statement, Alfonso, that, you know, if you look at, you know, 90% of people that are on SNAP, Medicaid, or some other welfare process, they don't have any higher ed. When unemployment from the 2009 big recession happened. Do what? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought someone was talking. But when you look at that, the people that were unemployed were 99% no higher ed. So higher ed actually kept the business going, if you will, of the state. So our argument isn't, give us funding because you've cut us. That's not our argument. Our argument is that if you want a return on investment that helps you to fund everything else, then you strategically place money with us. And that's and I think that is resonating very well, to be honest with you.
As far as return on investment, higher education is your best bet, period.
Period.
For yourself.
Absolutely. For yourself and for the state.
Thank you.
And by the way, what y'all are doing is crucial. We have the data on that now. What we've done in the last many years with the Committee on Equal Opportunities, I think is absolutely phenomenal. And I don't say that lightly, because I've been around this business probably longer than most of you want me to be. But, you know, no doubt about it, what this committee has done and how we are developing it. And I'll give a kudo to Dawn and Dr. Stad here. I mean, I think they run a pretty good committee because, well, I know they do. Other questions?
Actually, Aaron, in that regard, seems like you've told me that we're starting to get some pretty good national recognition for the work that we're doing in the new evaluation process.
We absolutely are. We've shared this with other people. We're not only getting national recognition, we're getting state recognition. As a matter of fact, I think later on this week, we're working with the Justice Cabinet to infuse some of the things we've done in our training into the Justice Department. So without a doubt, as a matter of fact, I've had a chance to, I'm on like 2 or 3 now national committees based on what we've done in Kentucky and how they can learn from us. Absolutely. Other questions? I know Dawn's anxious for me to shut up so she can get on with the meeting, but that's the great thing about being a president who shows up every once in a while. I can take a minute. So any other questions, anyone?
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, sir.
And at this point, I will turn it over to Dawn for her DEI update.
Thank you. Let me start from the beginning. That would be better. So what I wanted to do is kind of give you an update on some information we talked about last year. And about a year or so ago, we brought to you the fact that we were looking at having this cultural competence certification that was a statewide certification for faculty, staff, and students to ensure that we had this statewide input, broad, on the same page certification in terms of cultural competence. And so in the last year, we were able to bring together a cultural competence work group to inform this work. And so I wanted to give you an update as to where we were with that. So as you know, our policy, our diversity, equity, inclusion policy states that in order to live and thrive on a diverse campus and in an increasingly diverse world, students, faculty, and staff have to become much more culturally competent. And in the policy, it defines cultural competence as a better awareness of oneself, of the individuals with whom one interacts, and then being able to have the skills to effectively cross-culturally interact and communicate. And in our policy, it also speaks specifically to the fact that we want our institutions to graduate students who are culturally competent. And so we started to question, how do we know that's happening? How would an employer, because our employers, as we've stated throughout this meeting, our employers are asking that we bring to them students when they graduate that are culturally competent. And how do we know that we're doing that? What is there in place? And we knew that there was this work going on in different pockets at different institutions, but we hadn't come together as a statewide entity to discuss where there were similarities, what were our definitions, what were our common goals and processes, to see where there were gaps and where there were overlaps. And so we brought together representatives from each of our four-year campuses, and we had a small contingent of our KCTCS institutions, and it was faculty and staff that came and did this work. And so as a culturally competent work group, we came up with a mission that states that students, faculty, staff, administrators, Kentucky's public post-secondary institutions, and communities, everybody, if you will recognize their own responsibility to lead in a global society that promotes equity and justice. And so in our discussions, we wanted to come up with what we considered were minimum standards for cultural competence in order for one to be certified to be culturally competent, regardless of whether you were a student, faculty, staff member, et cetera. What were those minimum standards? So we came up with learning outcomes, we came up with modules. And since then, what we've been able to do is to create and integrate that with the A to the fourth model of cultural competence, so that it has a theoretical framework that goes with those learning outcomes in those modules. And so there are four components to the A to the fourth model of cultural competence. The first one is awareness. And so the committee that came up with, the work group came up with the goal of, through ongoing self-reflection, individuals will develop a better understanding of who they are, become more aware of human diversity, and demonstrate a respect for the dignity of others. And you'll see the associated learning outcomes with that, where individuals will know those, all of the terminology and what that means, and operating from a standard terminology that we have agreed upon statewide, and ultimately have a better awareness of oneself. And initially, the last bullet, we were thinking that this would be where the minimum work would occur, that people would have a better understanding of themselves as we look throughout this four components of this certification of this framework. But I'll tell you how we've tweaked that since this slide was created. The second component of that would be acknowledgement. We go from awareness to acknowledgement and define that goal as through ongoing self-reflection. All of this is self-reflection, it's ongoing. Individuals will recognize their power and privilege and how those influence relationships on an interpersonal, intergroup, and institutional levels. So the topics that would be discussed there would be intersectionality, power, privilege, oppression, when we're talking about acknowledgement and how that impacts our relationships. Then the third component, acceptance, would be where individuals start exploring the openness to their beliefs and ideas and practices and things that challenge their own worldviews, talking about implicit biases, explicit biases, microaggressions, all of those things that allow individuals to not only own their own worldview, but also be able to talk about what happens when I'm in a situation where there's someone else with a different worldview that challenges the one that I have. And then ultimately, we want to put this into action. And so with this goal, we have individuals being able to, as we looked at the definition of cultural competence, being able to have skills to effectively communicate and interact cross-culturally. So we're talking about here communication and people having an appreciation and acceptance, not only for themselves, but other individuals with whom they work, in order to be able to own and recognize their own responsibility in leading and promoting equity and justice in a global society, which takes us back to the mission the group had come up with. And you'll see the learning outcomes there talk about being able to be authentic in one's expression of oneself, being able to communicate cross-culturally and integrate those previous three components, awareness, acknowledgement, and acceptance, into ultimately a model of action. And so that was the content in terms of the framework. So, and we looked at we've been talking about how we make this into a micro credential. And so initially you saw where we were thinking about the awareness would be that minimum component, but upon further exploration and sharing with Dr. Thompson, we decided that if we're looking at a micro credential, we need to have at least 3 hours of content for, and we're talking about right now about students, 3 hours of content under awareness and 3 hours under acknowledgement, so that in order to receive your micro credential, you would have a total of 6 hours worth of credit. And initially we wanted to make sure that every student, that however this is laid out, that every student would have access to that. So if it's included in first year experience, freshman seminars, gen ed courses, something that is common to all of our institutions, regardless of whether they're 4-year or 2-year institutions. We were looking at just being able to have everyone have the opportunity to have what is the minimum, which would be awareness and acknowledgement, and content related to those two components. And then at the 4-year level, if individuals wanted to be able to have the full gamut of this cultural competence material, they would be able to take an additional 6 hours that would explore 3 hours under acceptance and 3 hours under action, and those learning outcomes and those topics and modules that you'll see. Since we've shared this with some individuals representing KCTCS, the concern is, well, you know, our institutions, we want to be able to offer that to our students as well. So we're going to take that feedback and make sure that we did not, of course, intend to slight anyone by any means. We were just trying to make sure that everyone had the minimum components. And so we'll make sure that we go back and look at ways and ask some questions and see how we can make sure that KCTCS students also have the opportunity to have acceptance and action if they want that as well. So, sorry, I needed a sip of water. So where are we? We've been talking about what that looks like for students. So one of the things that when we were talking with our initial work groups, we were thinking that we were going to be developing a curriculum, and we have this one curriculum that we'd be able to share and make sure that it has components in it that identified what were the minimum standards, and we'd be able to share that with institutions. And then upon further discussion, we felt that at CPE, in order to be able to honor the work that's previously being done at institutions, because we know that the institutions are doing some of this work, in order to be able to honor that, and in order to be able to allow for flexibility with the faculty in terms of the syllabi that they use, that it's more along the lines of our role to be the certifiers of a program, if you will. So what does that look like? It looks like us creating a proposal, a cultural competence certification proposal that outlines what would be included in a cultural competence certification program at an institution, and have that institution be able to submit proposals telling us how they are able to meet those particular requirements. And then from there, then look at the rubric for the assessment of the proposal to be able to say, yes, the program as submitted by XYZ institution meets this proposal, or it doesn't, it needs to add X, Y, and Z. And that way, CPE would certify the program, and then the program at the institution would certify the individual students. And so that takes into account, again, the work that's already being done and allows for that flexibility. And then finally, when we're talking about, we've been talking about students, what does it look like for faculty and staff? So in the fall, for 4 months, we did a professional development series at CPE where our staff worked through these modules for cultural competence. And we had a module for each one of those 4 components that you saw. And so what we were offering, or will be offering, is an opportunity to for us to expand that just a little bit more, and be able to have that for professional development for faculty and staff, if they so choose to participate. If they have something already for faculty and staff they want to use, and we can look at it and make sure that it's certifiable and meets the same type of components and criteria, we can do that as well through the certification proposal process. But if not, we'd be able to offer that for faculty and staff to say, here are some components. Either we can have smaller workshops and sessions that we can offer at CPE, or we can put them on the website and people can go and work through them at their own pace. Or we've also explored being able to work that into our symposium, our annual symposium in November, where individuals might want to sign up and take this cultural competence certification track for that day or day and a half, and be able to therefore get their certification. So that's where we are and what we're working on at the moment. And I know that we brought this up in a meeting last year, and just wanted to take a moment to share with you as committee members the exciting work that we're doing. We've shared it with different groups to get their feedback, and we want to take all of those suggestions and come back and make sure that we tweak what we need to tweak as we are going into later on in this into the spring, getting drafts together to be able to present. So I will stop there, I think, for any questions that anyone might have at this point.
Dawn, can I add something quickly? You said it, but I wanted to make sure that people understand. There's 3 points that she made that I think drives home why I think this will be super successful. First of all, no one's ever done it, right? But we didn't do it haphazardly. We did this with a lot of input from campuses, people that know what they're doing. Second thing is, some of you heard about cultural relevant pedagogy, cultural responsive pedagogy, cultural relevant this, and cultural responsive that. And all that's good. We are not discounting those, but those are inputs. You notice then that Dawn talks about cultural competence, just like writing competence, reading competence. This goes to identify and assess that people have skills in those particular areas. So we argue then, number 3, the best way to infuse into any, what I call infrastructure, are those elements of that infrastructure that makes it work the most effective, and then put that within it. In higher education, that's curriculum, and that's faculty and staff, right? If you think about it. So the idea that we're looking at what we're putting forth as a way to holistically build and scaffold In other words, if you tell a freshman in the first year about white privilege and that he or she has it, they'll never get it. We know that. But if you take them through a developmental process, an educational process, a learning process on awareness, the ability for them to understand the world exists around them that's different than theirs, on acknowledgement that whatever they believe or beliefs they hold will affect others. That could be in a positive or negative way, depends on how they use their beliefs and behaviors. And then number three, that's that emotional intelligence, that accepting. That's when you get to saying that although you may not know this unconscious bias that you have, this level of understanding that any group you belong to, whether that's been judged as normal, whether it's you being straight or whether or not you are white or you're rich or whatever, those things that have been judged normal has had an effect on who you are and the privilege you carry. And that has a societal effect on those that don't fall into those categorical areas. So what Dawn is talking about is really scaffolding in that curricular process and that human building, and the way we look at pedagogy, the way we do all those other things. But more importantly, what hasn't been done anywhere is assessing it to make sure that it's there, and then creating a continuous improvement model that then builds on this. So long after we're no longer in this position, it keeps feeding itself in a positive way. That's the only way we're going to change this paradigmic element that has in fact been historically with us, that we haven't moved as much. That's why you're seeing some of these things that we're seeing now. So, I just wanted to throw that in there, Dawn, if you don't mind.
Oh, by all means.
Dawn, so first of all, what you have presented is just to be applied to faculty or to students as well?
When we worked with the work group, we came up with the thought that everyone, regardless of what role, if it's faculty, students, or staff, would be able to be a part of any of those competencies. We have not shared it with, we have a student group with CPE that we have not yet been able to share it with. We had a meeting scheduled and it got rescheduled, so we've not been able to share that with them, but we're going to share that with them. So right now we've shared it with faculty and staff, we plan to share it with students to get their feedback from it, but the meeting.
So let me ask a follow-up to that. The question is, one of the goals for to create some kind of tool with which students can be culturally competent, so that whenever they apply for jobs, they can have something?
Yes, we're looking at having some type of micro-credential that says somewhere, and I was going to do something, my friend always teases me, this is my piece of paper that says somewhere on the piece of paper, and I saw you do it too, that says somewhere that yes, that they they are considered culturally competent by the CPE standards, and this is what it means. And that way we're looking at that certification to go statewide. So regardless of whether you're at Murray or Ashland, if you have that certification and you have that micro-credential, then there's that standard, that agreed upon standards at the states that says this is what that means. So yes, that is the goal, to have them be able to display that some kind of way.
So in the information that you were presenting, there was a point that included action. And I keep thinking about, in order to be culturally competent, you also have to demonstrate that you can communicate with people from other cultures and other languages. And in my mind, I'm thinking, and I don't know if perhaps this committee knows, and I don't know if maybe this is the moment to say this. So if this is not, please stop me. But at the national level, there is already existing a tool, an instrument that is called the Seal of Biliteracy, which is actually something that can prove the proficiency in the performance of a language for anybody that goes into higher ed, or even for those who graduate from higher ed and they want to apply for a job, they can have something in paper saying, this is my proficiency level, that goes to to the spirit of that 4-point in your proposal, which is the action theme, you know. So in my mind, I'm thinking the following, Don. Let's say that, for example, one student decides to go over that program in order to get the micro-credential. Will they be recognized if any of them having, for example, some kind of external tool such as the seal of literacy with which they can prove proficiency in the performance of a language? Will that be recognized in order to attain that specific component of the 4A model in order to attain the micro-credential?
So yes, we are looking at ways, because a part of it is that assessment, to be able to say they are able to demonstrate X, Y, and Z. And so if you would send me that tool that you're talking about, if you would either email it, the name of it to me, or send it to me in the chat so I can look at it. We are looking at working with institutions to talk about, okay, let's see ways that you are already doing some current assessments, ways that of information that we already have, and to see, you know, if there is need for multiple, you know, forms, as long as you're meeting the criteria on the rubric, to say that we know that Sally Jenkins met this because she demonstrated it by doing X, Y, and Z based on, you know, what they have. So we're looking at all of those, but definitely having assessment as a component of that to be able to say that they are able to demonstrate that.
Yeah. So Don, a couple of things. First, it is already on the chat. I have already put the name of the tool that will lead you to the website so that you guys know exactly what it is. And second of all, somebody who could speak very well to this, because they already have it running in their own school district, it would be Deborah Aparicio, who is present in here. Fayette County has actually a local seal of literacy. Their students who graduate from high school, they go on to higher ed with a piece of paper saying, this is my proficiency in the performance of a language. So maybe, I mean, Deborah, maybe you may want to speak out to this, but I'm just saying this because this is a trend that at the state is starting to grow. There are many other school districts that are very interested in this, including Jefferson County Public Schools. So perhaps this is something that it may be interesting that that CB perhaps would touch K-12 to say, hey, so we have heard about this, tell us a little bit about it, because, you know, if it's gonna meet those requirements of component 4 in the 4A model, that's already work done that is gonna help to attain that micro-credential. And if anything, all I can think of is, this is a great encouragement for me to say, oh, I want to continue the route of higher ed, because guess what? I already have 6 credits of this micro-credential.
Well, Alfonso, you're asking two things. Let me first of all say we already do accept that, as Deborah already knows. I actually put it in policy a couple of years ago. So if you don't have it coming into higher ed, we will give it to you in your first 2 years already. So that's one thing. Number two, you're absolutely right. We're looking at triangulating any of the things that are validated. There's a lot of tools that people say, you see this a lot with people getting a certification that they have soft skills or whatever. I don't buy into many of those because that mean they're competent. What you're talking about here is really a process of judging competency. So we do accept that already as a way of, if you don't have that, you have to take those language courses in your first 2 years of college. So we do that. What you're suggesting, though, I think is very good. And Dawn, I appreciate you getting that material, because what we're hoping to do with this, there'll be many micro-credentials, but what we're hoping to do is to infuse this in general education, where this belongs, pre-college education, general education, where this really belongs, what you're talking about. We hope to be able to, whether it's in the humanities, the social sciences, in the hard sciences, any of those sciences, that there are multiple ways that people can build on those last two of acceptance and action. We hope to build awareness and acknowledgement within what we call those general education. As Dawn mentioned, maybe the first year course, maybe something that infuses itself into a second year course or in whatever. But your example really goes to that last piece. So absolutely, I appreciate that. I'm sorry to jump in.
No, absolutely.
Further questions for Dawn?
This is Dr. Robertson. Dr. Profit, I was just wondering, will the committee have the opportunity to try or complete the modules and provide feedback prior to you all implementing it across the colleges and universities?
Absolutely. We look to you for that feedback, and we definitely would make sure that we gave you all the opportunity to look at it and comment. And I will reach out to you and say, hey, what do you think? And what are your thoughts? So most definitely.
Very good. Very good. Anything else? Okay, is there any other business that needs to be addressed today? Anyone have any further business?
Dr. Offit, I was wondering, I guess when I think of global competence, I think more of an ongoing journey rather than like something that you achieve and then you can check that box off. And so I guess that would be, it's not really a question, but my comment is that's what I would like to see at the end of this I don't know, course or class for the students and staff, is that that's the message that they take away, that it's not, oh, you're certified, I can check that box off, but it's, I'm in this journey, in this ongoing journey to become more and more globally competent, because it's a process.
Absolutely. And as we looked at those overall goals, it kept saying the ongoing self-reflection, because you're absolutely correct. It's not an endpoint like, oh, we're done and we close it off and we stop right now and we don't ever have to do anything else again, right? So absolutely. But to emphasize that is certainly part of the process, and we'll make sure that we continue to keep that in the forefront.
It's a continual education process. Okay. And any other comments or business to come before? If not, the next CEO meeting is scheduled for Monday, April 26th this year, 1 o'clock Eastern time, and it will be via Zoom once again. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, and so we have a second. All those in favor, please hit their leave button and have a great weekend.